Bill and Hillary Clinton heading for a showdown with the U.S. House over the pair's refusal to testify before a committee investigating Jeffrey Epstein. A vote is set for Wednesday on the House floor after Democrats joined Republicans on the House Oversight Committee to advance the contempt measure. It came after the former president and former Secretary of State did not comply with the committee's subpoenas. Joining us to discuss, Ella Lee, staff writer here at The Hill. Hey, Ella. So after that committee vote, the Republican chair of the committee, James Comer, hinted that there might be a possible path forward to get the Clintons on record without moving forward with that contempt vote before the full House. Has there been any progress on that front?
So what it's going to come down to here is if the Clintons and their lawyers can strike a deal with Congressman Comer and the committee before a contempt vote hits the floor. We know that the Clintons had tried to negotiate with Republicans earlier to testify behind closed doors, offering at one point to sit down for an interview with just Comer and Congressman Robert Garcia, the top Democrat on the panel. But Comer rejected that offer and scheduled the in-person depositions, which of course the Clintons skipped. So at this point, it sort of seems like the Clintons are doing a little bit of gambling, perhaps hoping that Congress would prefer to take their testimony behind closed doors and keep control of things as opposed to potentially sending them to court where we're going to see lawyers, not lawmakers, cross-examining this evidence.
So if we don't get a deal before Wednesday, what are Democrats going to do if a contempt vote for the Clintons actually makes it to the House floor?
I mean, if the Oversight Committee's vote is any indication, Democrats are going to vote their conscience on this one. Despite Bill Clinton being a former Democratic president and Hillary Clinton being both the Democratic Secretary of State and, of course, presidential nominee, the Epstein file issue is not entirely a partisan matter. There are real victims for Jeffrey Epstein's crimes who want answers and want accountability. And Democrats have been pretty clear that they don't want to leave those victims out in the cold. Now, it's not likely that tangents of Democrats are going to vote to hold the Clintons in contempt. However, like we saw on the panel, 9 Democrats voted in favor of the resolution to hold Bill Clinton in contempt, 3 for Hillary Clinton. And so I think that some Democrats here are going to give the go-ahead, and the measure should then pass pretty easily.
How do Republicans respond to accusations that this is a partisan attack on the Clintons? Democrats say, they also want someone like Pam Bondi held in contempt. President Trump, Elon Musk also named in these Epstein files, but they, of course, haven't been called as of yet to testify in front of Congress.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we've heard Democrats say is, of course, if you're going to hold the Clintons in contempt, then why on earth aren't you holding Pam Bondi or other Justice Department officials in contempt, too, for failing to comply with this timeline that was laid out in the Epstein Files Transparency Act for releasing all of the material related to Jeffrey Epstein? Some Republicans have expressed frustration that many of the files remain unreleased as well. We saw Comer say in a recent exchange with a Democratic lawmaker who was pushing to hold Bondi in contempt that, quote, nobody on our side is defending Pam Bondi, I assure you. And so even though Republicans are maintaining that the Justice Department is basically doing its best to comply with the law and release the documents in a manner that's expeditious, takes into account the need to closely comb through these files and make sure that there are appropriate redactions to protect the victims, we're still seeing some frustration from them there as well. But nobody has crossed the line into seeking contempt proceedings for Bondi or others at this point.
So what would happen if the House votes on Wednesday to hold the Clintons in contempt? What would happen next?
So if the House votes on the resolution, then the matter is going to be certified to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution. The charge that would be looked at here is contempt of Congress. It's a misdemeanor federal offense, and the contempt statute makes it a crime to willfully refuse to comply with a congressional subpoena. It carries a maximum fine of $100,000 and up to a year in jail. If a contempt referral gets to the Justice Department, there's a very good chance that the Clintons are going to face charges. I mean, you only have to look back a couple years for a clear institutional precedent that high-profile political figures aren't to be spared from prosecution when the law is clear. And that's, of course, when Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon faced the same charge for shirking subpoenas from the House Gen 6 committee. Both Navarro and Bannon ended up doing prison time after they were convicted on those charges, 4 months each. But of course, before we get ahead of ourselves, the Justice Department would need to obtain an indictment and a jury would need to convict before any prison time is on the table.
Yeah, and I guess there could be a question about whether the Department of Justice could actually get an indictment in D.C. At times, grand juries here in the nation's capital have declined to indict people in cases brought by the Trump GOJ.
Yeah, I mean, look, grand juries are made up of individuals, and that means that they are unpredictable. We've absolutely seen grand juries refuse to highlight some of the harsher Justice Department charges that have been sought in recent months in DC, particularly in relation to the local crackdown on crime and how residents have interacted with federal law enforcement who have been patrolling the streets of the nation's capital here. But grand juries are still indicting in DC, and I'm not sure that we'd see that kind of protest in a criminal contempt case. Contempt of Congress is a pretty cut and dry charge, and most jurors take their responsibility to take a clear eyed look at the law very seriously. So there's, of course, no way of knowing how things would turn out. But if charges are lodged, it's going to be left in the hands of jurors to decide here what happens to the Clintons.
All right, we will leave it at that and continue to follow the story. Ella Lee, thanks so much for your time.